going to call to order the June 15th meeting of the Corte Madera Town Council. Rebecca, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Mongan.
Here.
Councilmember Ravazio.
Here.
Vice Mayor Casissa.
Here.
Mayor Beckman.
Here, thank you. Please join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to open time for public comment, and this is an opportunity for any members of the public who would like to comment on items not on our agenda to do so, and members of the public will be given 3 minutes apiece to make their comment. So if any member of the public would like to make any public comment at our open time, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. And Rebecca, do we have any emailed comments for open time?
No, we did not receive any emailed public comments for open time.
Great, thank you. And I'm not seeing any hands up. So seeing no public comment, we will close open time and move on to item 3. That's our presentations. And our presentation this evening is request for a proclamation on Parks Make Life Better Month, July 2021.
Just a minute, please. I'm going to move over the students who will be presenting that request for a proclamation.
Great.
There's Sophia. And there's Piper. And I'm going to also move over Aaron Duggan from the Parks and Recreation Department, who coordinated this presentation this evening.
Hi, should I share my screen?
Sure, if you've got materials for us, yes, please.
Yes.
Thank you. And hello, Aaron.
Okay. Should we start?
Sure, yes, please.
Okay, hi, my name is Piper Harvey. I'm a rising junior at Redwood and I'm a Corte Madera resident.
Hi, I'm Sophia Guerra. I'm also a Corte Madera resident and I'm going to be a rising senior at Marin Catholic High School. And as you all know, parks are an integral part of our community. They encourage mental and physical health and they allow for fun ways to immerse oneself into the natural environment.
With a wide range of activities in parks, it will promote the arts, and parks also increase social connections due to the wide range of activities, so more people would likely attend. Last year, the mayor, Eli Beckham, proclaimed July 2020 to be Parks Make Life Better Month, as you can see on the image on the right. It is very common for communities across California to observe public park significance in July. Last year, people were encouraged to go enjoy the parks and take part in a wide range of activities. As you can see on the left, there was many activities every single day. Last year was a success, so we want to encourage the mayor to proclaim July 2021 to be Parks Make Life Better Month once again.
However, this year, we should include marginalized groups into these activities. Since the onset of COVID-19, some groups have been affected more than others. One group that suffered severely from the virus is the developmentally disabled community. These people largely rely on community outreach programs for their sense of belonging and mental health. And the virus made it difficult for some of these programs to attract volunteers, which then isolated the developmentally disabled even more. And as we emerge out of this pandemic, we should do our best to make the developmentally disabled community feel like they belong. And Rec Inc., through Corte Madera Recreation Department, their program's main mission is to include the developmentally disabled community in a wide range of activities, from dances to sports and to the arts. Corte Madera Rec Department will pair up teens and clients, and we've reached out to Redwood and Marin Catholic volunteers. I know I'm vaccinated, Piper's vaccinated. I have a lot of friends from Marin Catholic who attend the Rec Inc. Zoom volunteer meetings who are also vaccinated. So I think it'll be really easy to find volunteers who can be paired up with these clients. And we plan to gather in Town Park on July 22nd from 6:30 to 7:30 for activities. These include Joke Day, Simplicity Day, kite flying, and bird watching. And we plan to host a trial run on June 24th to figure out how many activities we can fit into a night and which activities were most successful. Overall, we believe that wrecking clients paired with teens from the community in Parks Make Life Better Month is a great way to acknowledge a very important and often overlooked group in our community, and we would greatly appreciate your support in making this a possibility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you both. Is that the end of your presentation?
Yes.
It is.
Awesome, thank you guys. We'll start with any questions from the town council. Do we have any questions for Sophia or Piper? And if not, we'll open this up to public comment. So any members of the public who would like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. And I'll ask Rebecca if we got any emailed public comments on this.
We might have one of the clients, Lisa Tony, watching. I'm not sure if she's raising her hand. She might have had some trouble getting on.
Okay, I see I think a Nancy Tony.
Yes, that would be her.
Okay, no hand up. Should, if she was planning on speaking, should I just bring her on? Or?
Yeah, I think she just wanted to comment on if she was interested in you doing this or not. It would mean a lot to her, I think.
Okay, so Ms. Tony, if you would like to speak, I'm gonna allow you to talk here, so you can just unmute yourself and make any comment that you might like to. Thank you, Erin.
Surely. Hey, Lisa, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi, Lisa. Can you turn your video on?
So what do I? Oh yeah.
Oh, you know, I might have to bring her over to panelist if you want.
Oh.
Oh, it's okay. She can just
Are you sure? Because it'll just take just a moment.
Let me ask my sister to help me.
okay.
Okay. Let's give it just a moment and see.
Sure thing.
Sorry.
Let me get my sister.
Okay. Your sister rocks.
Perfect.
Can you help me?
In the meantime, Rebecca, I'm assuming no emailed public comments on this, right?
We did not receive any emailed public comments, but shoot. Okay.
Hey, Lisa, it's okay. Why don't you just tell them, are you looking forward to doing this? Are you there?
You know what, Erin?
Oh, never mind. There she is. Oh.
Perfect.
Hey, Lisa.
Yeah.
They just want to know if you think you're going to have a fun time with the teenagers in the park.
Yes.
Are you looking forward to it?
Yes.
Why are you looking forward to it?
See us, a lot more new people.
Yeah, that'll be good. Okay. That's really all.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Great to hear from you. Alrighty, thank you. And I do not see any other public comment. So we will close public comment on this item and bring it back to the council for any discussion and a possible motion on this proclamation. Do we have any comments? Yeah, Fred.
Yeah, I just want to thank the presenters. Great job. So I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Perfect. Thank you. Do we have a second? Looks like a tie between Bob and Charles. Rebecca, you can put down whichever you like. And we will have a vote, please.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes, and I also want to thank Sophia and Piper for an excellent presentation.
Councilmember Orazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
and Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you very much, Sophia and Piper. That was fantastic. Really great to hear from you guys. And we appreciate all of the great work that you guys are doing on this. And thank you, Erin, as well.
Thank you. I will change you up
Yeah.
to attendee, and thank you for presenting.
Great job.
Great, thank you guys. And that is going to bring us to item 4, which is our consent calendar. These are items that are routine or have been discussed previously and do not require further discussion. Any member of the council or the public may pull an item from the consent calendar for further discussion. Would any members of the council like to pull any items from our consent calendar? And if not, we'll open this up to the public. If any members of the public would like to pull any items from the consent calendar or comment on anything on our consent calendar, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. And Rebecca, did we get any emails on consent items?
No, we did not receive any emailed public comments.
Great, thank you. And I'm not seeing any hands up, so we will close public comment and bring the consent calendar back to council for a motion. Do we have a motion? Fred.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve consent items 4A through 4J.
Great, thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
Second.
Great, thank you, Leela. Rebecca, whenever you're ready.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Monken,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you very much. That brings us to our public hearings. The first public hearing tonight is 5A, which is review and possible adoption of resolution number 28, 2021, approving the town operating budget for fiscal year 2021, 2022. And I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. As you know, at the last meeting on June 1st, the budget for the fiscal year 2021-22 was discussed and a public hearing was held. There have only been 2 changes since that budget was presented. One was that some revenue from Marin Emergency Radio Authority has been added in the amount of $30,000 to account for a payment made for services by the town clerk and an administrative analyst. And the Measure A Parks Fund includes now $100,000 in expenditures for town park restroom design and construction instead of $100,000 for dog park improvements. Other than that, everything is the same as was presented, and the replacement pages are attached to the staff report.
Great, thank you so much, Daria. Do we have any questions for staff on this? Yeah, Fred.
I got one question, which it may be more directed towards Todd. If I can remember on the last go around, there was, you took 60,000, I think, away from doing anything with the dog park and flipped it to 100,000 to the bathrooms. So I want to see, does that mean nothing's going to happen at the dog park? And then the 100,000 for the bathrooms, I thought we weren't going to do any one-offs for Park and Rec until we went through the master planning stage. And then one more piece of that on the bathrooms is 100,000. Is that a short-term fix or is it a long-term fix, in the sense that, are we going to spend 100,000 next fiscal year, and then after the master plan, it's going to come back for a long-term fix, which is going to be another X amount of dollars?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. There's a lot of questions in there. I'll try to answer them. Good point. So yes, the intent of staff is not to have one-offs, especially in the bathrooms, as I think listening to your questions, I mean, staff hears it loud and clear. You know, this capital improvement project list is really projects that have already gone before council. You've seen the project, you've approved the project. We're trying to complete, you know, those projects within the past 5 years. So the bathroom discussion, to your point, it's a placeholder, and it's a temporary placeholder. And so staff would, starting in September, start to have conversations with council on the discussion of bathrooms. Personally, I prefer it to be through the master planning process because I think it's a much bigger discussion. And so that's one, but in the meantime, it would be, do we want to remove the porta potties, so to speak, from town park? And do we want to have something a little bit nicer, kind of like the event style, you know, trailers that you see and for major events, and possibly placing that somewhere, but it being a temporary fix while we discuss this. Also, there's I've had conversations with council members potentially about the possibility of securing the front area of the community center and potentially opening those bathrooms up during the weekends, and possibly hiring a part-time person to work, you know, the front counter. Is that maybe something we should consider as an option? So all those discussions will come to council starting in September when we talk about the work plan and moving forward. I see this as a placeholder for any discussions, and I wanted to do that because if council does green light, for instance, us making a renovation of the community center to open those bathrooms, or having something a little bit nicer, as an example, trailers in the park somewhere, I wanted to have that immediately available within the budget if you decided to do that. So that's the intent right now. We could certainly remove it completely from the budget, get some feedback from the council on this, and come back to you at a later date with options as well. So it's just something that staff felt to have. It may be appropriate to have a line item based on some comments that we've heard from council in the past and the community recently in our community chats. And to the other question, Mr. Vice Mayor, I talked to RJ Suko, our Public Works Director. We believe that we can handle some improvements with mulch as we did this year possibly twice a year within the dog park to get us to a reasonable maintenance schedule. And we can do that within our current budget and maintenance line items within Public Works maintenance.
Okay.
Hope I answer your question.
Yeah, I got one more for you. Sorry. When you mentioned you're going to be coming back to, I think in September for a discussion, since this comes under Park and Rec, is that going to be part of the process? In other words, because when I chaired Park and Rec, if we had anything like this, all this stuff was vetted at the Park and Rec Commission level, and it went through a process, public input, commission, working with RJ to come up with things, and then presenting it as a package to town council, trying to flesh out as many issues as could be possibly. And I just think it opens it up for transparency, and again, for a chance for the public to voice their opinion on what they like to see. I just want to know if it's going to go through that process, because I noticed with the furniture, it didn't go through any process at all like that. So I don't know if you can just touch upon that.
I think that's a lesson learned, and that's the intent. We wanted to go through the public process. We wanted to go through the Park and Rec Commission. That's their role. It's vetted there, and recommendations then are moved to the council. There's been a lot of discussion on some temporary, pretty immediate changes, and it's not, staff doesn't have a recommendation right now for you. But again, it's seen as, it would be something to go to council first if you wanted to have a temporary fix or give some direction to staff as we approach the Park and Rec Commission, because I think the Park and Rec Commission would also appreciate, anything from that standpoint as they continue with their master planning process.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Great. Let's go to Charles. Thanks, Fred.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, if we do the nicer trailers to replace the porta toilets, would those be rentals or purchase? I guess we'll talk about this later, but I can see some advantages for the type of venues that we do, the Oktoberfest and other things down the line, that when we do the master plan, that they'll still have a lot of use around town and be a good investment. So it's important to know if it's just a rental and a temporary fix, or if it's investment in some mobile infrastructure.
I think that would be one of the options we would want to evaluate and bring to the council for consideration. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Charles. Any other questions for staff on this item? If not, I just had one quick question. I was just curious on the Park Mandera Center Fund. I know, I know it had kind of a long and slow climb into the black, and then COVID hit and was kind of a setback because we lost some businesses there and some tenants couldn't pay rent and such, which is totally makes sense. But I was just curious, what do the prospects look like for that to kind of climb back into a position where it's stable and it's paying off its deficit without us making transfers in?
Daria, what the current anticipated deficit of revenue to expenditure this current fiscal year is? What is that number?
This current fiscal year, it's about $77,000 that we're anticipating the deficit being.
We lost a couple of our smaller tenants, and so right now we're working hard with Keegan and Copen to fill those, as well as, we've been doing some rent control. We have some lease agreements and some increases coming in revenue with that. We believe within the first 6 months we can close that gap. We're really close, Mr. Mayor, to your question. And also the other part is with COVID, we have that the dance studio that is there as well, that we made available to really kind of improve some of our resources within Parks and Rec as well. And so we're hoping to also add some services and create additional revenue as well. So we believe within the first 6 months now, especially now that we're here June 15th and we've opened, that we have a lot of opportunities. And that's our goal.
Great. Thank you very much. That's all for me. Any last questions? And if not, we'll open this up to public comment. So any members of the public who would like to comment on our budget, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. And we will start with Pat Ravazio.
Hi, this is regarding the issue of the restrooms in Town Park and the dog park improvements. And I want to remind everybody that when we started the long-term planning process, the Parks and Rec Commission voted to intentionally take out the issue of restrooms because we decided that the need was urgent and great. And I think I can hear the park from my house today, and it sounds like there's about 100 people down there with 2 little porta johns and then the bathroom all the way over by the tennis courts. And I just want to encourage us to act now while it's summertime and the usage of the park is at an all-time high. And whether it's to quickly bring in a portable or simply open up the doors, remove the computers and things, anything of value from the lobby. And on the busy days, on the weekends, simply open up the doors like they used to be open from 9 to 5. So I wanted to say that. And then I also wanted to say that the thing that has never been vetted and discussed at the Parks and Rec level was the idea of astroturfing the dog park, which would make us the only dog park in all of Marin County to have astroturf. And I think the chip bark is working fine. And especially with droughts here now and not looking like they're going to continue, can we please, if that is going to be a continued pursuit, bring that out into the open and stop having council members tell staff to do these long explorations of things that never even did go to Parks and Rec. Okay, so that's all for now, those 2 issues. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you very much, Pat. And I'm not seeing any other hands up right now. Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments?
No, we did not receive any emailed public comments.
Okay, thank you. And we don't have any other hands up, so we will close public comment and bring this item back to council for discussion and a possible motion on resolution number 28, 2021, accepting the budget. Yeah, Bob.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second? Great, thank you, Fred. And Rebecca, whenever you're ready.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you very much. That brings us to item 5B, which is consideration and possible adoption of resolution number 29, 2021, increasing by approximately 1.19% the maximum rates that may be charged for delivery of solid waste collection and dual stream recycling services by Mill Valley Refuse Service with rates effective July 1st. And I'll turn over to staff.
I am bringing over Jim Averoni from Mill Valley Refuse and Garth Schultz representing our 3 consulting group. And then we can get started.
Perfect, thank you. Hey, Jim, how you doing?
Welcome, Jim.
Hi,
Yeah.
everybody. Good evening.
Jim, do you have any staff on the Zoom that you wanted to bring over?
Yes, I think Jennifer Dami
That's what I thought, but
would like to be available if based on questions that might be asked. Yes.
okay, perfect.
Great.
I think I just did that.
Well, thank you, Jim and Jennifer, for being here. Thank you, Garth.
Before anyone else speaks, I have a brief summary about the Mill Valley Refuse rate application and the request and the purpose of the request. They are required by their agreement to submit a rate application by April 1st annually. And Town Manager Cusimano received the rate application on April 1st, and a 2.35% rate increase was requested. As most of the council members may recall, last year's rate hearing conversation was delayed by 1 quarter in order to provide Mill Valley Refuse the time to fully evaluate the effects of the pandemic on their operations and their costs, and make sure that the need was reflected in that. And last year's rate increase, which was heard by council on September 1st, 2020, council approved a 7.85% increase, which was reflected as a 10.47% increase compressed into a 9-month billing cycle. And at that time, council also discussed and voted to move from a tiered rate structure for flat area, hill area, and Christmas tree hill area to a blended rate structure, which spreads the cost of the service among all Corte Madera residential curbside customers. So that discussion took place last year, and the new rates went into effect for all residential curbside customers. And also every 3 years, participating jurisdictions can request to have a third party review the rate application and methodology. And our 3 consulting group was contracted to perform that analysis and provided their review and findings to all of the managers of the participating jurisdictions on May 28th, which is also included as an attachment to your staff report. In their review, they recommended that the Corte Madera rate increase be adjusted to 1.19%. And for the average residential curbside customer, that can be reflected as a 53-cent per month increase to 32-gallon can customers and a 45-cent per month increase for 20-gallon can customers for residential curbside services. And as you can see on the screen, we have Jim Ivaroni and staff present from Mill Valley Refuse to answer any questions that you may have and to help with the discussion. And also Garth Schultz, representing our free consulting group, who performed the rate application evaluation, is also present and has a brief presentation that may be helpful for you in your discussion as well. Garth, I do have that open. I didn't know if that was a backup or if you wanted me to operate it for you.
Whatever's most convenient.
And I think Todd may have also had some things he wanted to say, but that's my summary of the request of the discussion.
Perfect, Rebecca, thank you. Well stated. Thank you for putting the report together. And I think it would be appropriate, Garth, to maybe move to you to the presentation.
Excellent, happy to do so. And Rebecca, it might be easiest to share on your end on one screen this evening in the remote part of my home.
Let me get that started.
While she pulls it up, council members, thank you for having me this evening. Again, I'm Garth Schultz with our 3 consulting group. We are a consulting group that works exclusively for municipalities, cities, towns, special districts, counties. We don't work for private solid waste operators, nor do we work for Mill Valley Refuse Service, but we do understand the solid waste industry well. Our service area is on regular rate adjustment reviews, contract drafting, procurement, negotiations, and state compliance. And so we work at your behest and the behest of ratepayers all up and down the state. For my part, I'm a principal in the firm. I also spent 8 years in local government managing contracts and rate application processes. And this is the second engagement. We did the last one in 2018 for the prior base year review with Mill Valley Refuse Service. So thank you for your time. I just have a brief presentation. Rebecca, next slide, please. Well, so just covering the purpose of our review, the methodology that we employed and the methodology that MVRS applies in projecting out rates via these rate application processes. I'll share our findings in brief, and then I also have a chart comparing the resultant rates for the town to other rates throughout Marin County, as well as the average throughout Marin County. Next slide, please. In brief, our role is here as a third-party reviewer and verifier of the underlying math of the rate application, their adherence to past practice. So part of what Mill Valley Refuse Service does is makes one joint application to all 9 of its franchising entities. In prior reviews that we've conducted in prior years, we've established findings related to allocations, methodological approaches, allowable and non-allowable costs. We seek to ensure that Mill Valley Refuse Service is carrying forward those adjustments over the course of time. We also review the application for conformance for the requirements within the agreements themselves, which vary somewhat agency by agency within the service area. And we tie back their projections of expenses and revenues to their financial records, both prior years audited financial statements, as well as the current year's unaudited financial statements, unaudited only in the sense that at the time they prepared the rate application, the audit is not yet complete. And then we also look at the reasonableness of the projections with due consideration to industry norms and our consideration in other agencies. Next slide, please. So that covers our role. In a nutshell, this slide covers how Mill Valley Refuse Service conducts their forecasts or projections of both expenses and revenues for a coming rate year. So as I mentioned already, they seek and apply for rate adjustment for all 9 agencies simultaneously, covering overall company projections of expenses and then of revenues individually by agency. Per the franchise agreement held by Mill Valley Refuse with the city, they forecast revenues to project a 10% profit on allowable costs. So it's not necessarily a profit guarantee. Actual profit is dependent upon where actual revenues and actual expenses come in for coming rate years, and it can vary from this 10% number. Through the agreements, Mill Valley Refuse Service can request adjustments to the rates in any year where it believes that its current rates won't provide a fair return, meaning defined as the 10% profit. In other years, Mill Valley Refuse can apply or just adjust rates by CPI or not seek rate adjustment in those years. And so it's at the company's discretion to make those applications to the town and the other franchising agencies. And that's detailed in this next bullet. Following any rate application such as this one, they are able to apply for or apply to the rates a CPA adjustment on those rates, and may apply in any year where they find that maximum rates may not achieve a fair return. And that's per the existing language in the agreement. Next slide, please. So in terms of the elements of their application, they start with their financial statements from prior year. They look to the current year's non-audited financial statements, which I mentioned, and then they project out expenses based on those, applying adjustments to labor, fuel, equipment, tipping costs, and the like. And those are generally well known and easy to project. Within any operation such as Mill Valley Refuse Services, it's largely labor driven, as well as tipping fee driven with third-party entities. So as you may be aware, as the council, the garbage, green waste, and recycling collected by Mill Valley Refuse goes to other non-affiliated entities. And so Mill Valley Refuse is essentially engaged with them for pricing per ton on those, and doesn't have a direct overall control on those costs. As you've heard in prior years, that's affected the recycling per ton tipping fees, which was an element of prior year's adjustments. And then Mill Valley Refuse projects revenue by jurisdiction based on current subscription levels and current rates for those subscription levels. So that projection is based on the existing customer base within the town and all the other service areas. And the simple math of it is after projecting for expenses and projecting for revenues, there's a delta that is derived, and that delta is applied as a percentage to the overall rates. Next slide, please. So in terms of our projections for this, or our review for this year, we found that the expense projections were reasonable, tied to the statements. It was in keeping with prior practice, no real issues there. We reviewed the revenues at current rates and found that those were reasonable, but did make a number of adjustments for mathematical accuracy and consistency. That's one of the primary reasons for the findings changing from Mill Valley Refuse Services' original application. Notably here, with the COVID closures of the prior year, it is notoriously difficult to project where commercial revenues are going to land for a coming 12-month year period. This is not exclusive to Mill Valley Refuse Service. This has become a challenge all up and down the state with the closures and uncertainty about how economic recovery in the commercial sector may occur. Mill Valley Refuse's methodology for commercial revenues was to take the actual revenues for the first quarter of 2021 and annualize them over a 12-month period. There may be other ways of doing that, but we found it to be reasonable given the data that was available and in hand from Mill Valley Refuse at the time that they issued the application on April 1st. Actual commercial revenues, may vary from this, depending upon the level and degree of economic recovery from COVID-19. And then a final adjustment we made, which is covered in our report, was to account for a change in treatment for debris box revenue, meaning the larger bins, and applying that to the agencies, which is also a reason for a reduction in the rate recommendation from the original application. Next slide, please. So these are the overall resultant outcomes specific to the town. You can see yourselves 4 lines down in bold. So moving from 44 and change a month to high 44 and change, roughly that 53% or 53 cent difference, 1.19% overall. But the next slide really is kind of telling in terms of where you stand within the rest of Marin County. And so these are comparing the in blue Mill Valley Refuse Services residential 32-gallon rates. So those are the monthly rates for 32-gallon customers, which is the standard, kind of most commonly subscribed to size, generally speaking. You can see the town's rate highlighted in red, for 2021, 2022, and 44.88 compared to the average across Marin County, in the mid 47s. In gray, you can see, comparative pricing with Marin Sanitary Service. In green, Recology, Sonoma Marin. In orange, Bay Cities Refuse. And then there is one municipal hauling operation operating in the county, and that's Tamalpais Community Services District. So overall, and I looked at this for commercial rates as well, the town's rates are on the lower end of those offered to jurisdictions by Mill Valley Refuse Service, and also below the average of the rates in the current calendar year. And with that, I will close up my presentation. I'm certainly available for questions you may have, and thank you for the time and including me this evening.
Great. Thank you very much, Garth. Did we have any other reporting from anyone? Jim, did you or your staff want to speak at all?
No, Garth has accurately and very well presented our application. So we are here available for any further questions that council might have.
Great, thank you, sir. So we will go now to questions from the town council. Do we have any questions on this rate application? Yeah, Fred.
Yeah, I got a couple for you. If I have this correct, you can come back to us a year from now and ask for another increase, either based off CPI or if there's differences in your revenue or expenses. Is that correct?
It is correct. We can come back April 1st of every year. We do an evaluation and determine if that's necessary. There were a couple of years in the recent past where we did not have to do that 2 years in a row, but that is not the norm. Normally we come in for something, CPI or a little bit higher.
Okay. And then Garth, on the graph, I think the last graph you showed, are the numbers somewhat skewed to a certain degree? Because I guess I'm looking at the geographical part of it, which is Corte Madera, at least on the east side, and part of the west side, it's pretty much flat. When you get into Mill Valley, it's all hills. So you can see theoretically that obviously in Mill Valley, the rate is probably going to be higher, and maybe some out in Marin County, I want to say in West Marin County, where you're traveling a further distance, there's more gas involved and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely correct. I mean, the variances between rates across the county, both within a single hauler's operations and then comparing haulers to each other, are affected, essentially we call it time and motion. So how much time does it take to service individual accounts? How much time are they out on route? And what does that yield then in terms of cost to the company? So for example, in Mill Valley Refuse's methodology and application, they're allocating costs based on metrics such as labor hours and truck hours. And so their overall cost structure is allocated amongst the agency in accordance with those types of metrics.
Okay. And then can you just elaborate just a little bit more on the commercial side? Because if I have this right, they're using like first quarter numbers, but it seems like the first quarter, again, it's all theoretical with COVID and a lot of those businesses not being open, those numbers are probably going to be, again, it's all relative on the low side. And hopefully as time goes on, those numbers are going to go up if more businesses open.
That if more businesses open and there's a return to normal in the commercial space, yes, based on these projections, there could be more revenues coming in than is projected.
Okay. And then I'm sorry, one last question, which is, if Mill Valley Refuge, have you guys ever come back to us and asked for a decrease in rates because your revenue is out of whack X amount of dollars, and instead of an increase, you're looking for a decrease? Out of curiosity.
That happened one time in my 25 years of being with the company. It happened once.
Okay. Thanks. I appreciate your time, both of you.
Great. Thank you, Fred. Great questions. Do we have other questions? Yeah, Leela.
Thanks. Just a couple of questions to make sure I understand how this works. So the need for an increase is based on projections for the next year. Do I have that right? Not what happened last year?
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
And does the increase, so suppose we approve this increase and then that goes for the next year, does it, suppose there was another request for an increase next year, do they get stacked, or are we starting over every year at some base rate?
We next year would be, next year's rates would be based on whatever they are at the time. So this year's rates, if we were to come in for a another increase or a decrease, it would be based on whatever this year's rates are, which would be the ones you're approving here or addressing here tonight.
Gotcha. Okay. So if the increase is due to something kind of unusual that you don't really expect to continue well into the future, there may well need to be an adjustment downward once things kind of normalize at a baseline level and you don't have that kind of unusual factor justifying the increase any longer.
Yeah, but I mean, this whole COVID impact on commercial revenues is the perfect example of what you might be thinking about. When the businesses closed down, the revenues dropped. This year we had to project revenues for commercial businesses, but we had to project them as they were in March, so that we could have our rate application ready for April 1st. In March, of course, we did not know whether or not the economy would be open again, the pandemic would be over. And so it is possible that now we're in June. Today is the day that everyone is able to go into a store without a mask on. And so hopefully this will bring back business to pre-COVID levels. But that is we don't have a crystal ball. That is a projection that we can only all hope for. But if it happens that everything just starts booming again, then it would be possible that next year our revenues would be at a higher level than projected this year, and that would have a positive impact on rates for the ratepayers.
And in that event, is it just up to Mill Valley Refuse sort of on your own initiative to come back and ask for a decrease? Or is there any, I guess what I'm trying to understand is there any way that we as town council can kind of monitor when there is that mismatch between, the projection and the actual? Is it just Mill Valley Refuse Service, sort of choosing to bring that to us, or how does that work?
I guess it would be if we would go through the process of creating an application in March, and at the point of where our application, where our figures were finished and we looked at what the rates were, yeah, if we saw a big decline, theoretically, it's never happened overall, all of our jurisdictions. The one time that we had a reduction in Corte Madera, there were increases everywhere else. It was just Corte Madera that was reduced. So I suppose theoretically we could just say, no, we're not going to raise rates this year. And maybe if the town was, well, let's put it this way, if the town was suspicious that there should be a rate reduction, you could request our application and have that have those numbers examined. So I don't think there's anything that requires us to come in with a rate application if we don't think we need one. But in this case, I think given the fact that everyone is aware that commercial revenues were down and that has impacted rates, and that the economy is now coming back, and the expectation is commercial, or the hope at least, is that commercial revenues will come back, I think it's probably is advisable for us to come back next year with a report with a regular rate application that shows all of our jurisdictions what actually happened in this coming rate year.
Gotcha. And Todd, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or staff does generally, do we have any sort of monitoring, triggering, that we sort of do on our end, just so that we're kind of aware of, we're not wholly dependent on whether, Mill Valley Refuse Service decides to seek a rate decrease. And just to be clear, you mentioned, us being suspicious or something of a decrease being needed. I don't mean anything like that. Just,
Sure, I understand. It's just,
as stewards of the taxpayer money, I just want to make sure that we're doing our responsibility.
I think to your question, Councilmember, I think it's past practice. It's putting what we've put in place. We have Garth Schultz and R3 doing that evaluation, and we've discussed it as a group of other members within our group under Mill Valley Refuse of should it be annually, should it be every 2 years? What is the right point to like really do an audit and just to make sure things are being done the right way. And we have landed on 3 years. It seems to work for us. In my time of following this, there's been a few cycles now with the audits. I find things to be on the up and up. It's a good working relationship. I think they're justified. And so that, I think we have that mechanism in place. It's a 3-year mechanism, not an annual, but we could always talk about that moving forward.
Could I interject?
It probably would have been better for me to use the term due diligence, you doing your due diligence rather than being suspicious.
Right. So hi, Jennifer Dami, Chief Financial Officer of Mill Valley Refuse. Good evening, everybody. So one of the things that you could look at yourselves is we pay you franchise fees. And so if your franchise fees are high, then we're making money. And if we come in with no rate increase, you should absolutely question that. But normally we go through the rate application process. If we say we don't need any money, you can ask us for the copy of the rate application, and it will show all the numbers. So that's probably the best way to do that. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. Okay, and I'm sorry, one last quick question. When we do this review, which I understand can happen every 3 years, does that look backwards at the past 3 years? So it includes, the 2 years that wouldn't have been included in the last review, or is that just a snapshot of the current application year?
Historically, it has been looking forward, so reviewing the reasonableness of projections. However, starting with the city of Mill Valley, we've been asked to do a retroactive review, comparing prior rate application projections to results from prior years. That was an item that came up at their council last year, I understand it, and so they've asked us to take that look back as well. That analysis has not yet been completed. It'll be getting underway, I think, sometime over the course of the summer. So it's not a regular part of the process, but it is something that is being requested going forward.
I'd say to Jennifer's point, it's a good one of what would you look at to really to this question, and Jennifer's accurate. If you go back at least to the past 5 fiscal cycles, our franchise fee revenue has pretty much mirrored what has been presented to us on an annual basis. We can confirm that. So
Great,
the other point I would note.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, my apologies, council member. I just want to say the other point of note is that, in years where the projections are rosier than what ends up being true in actuality, so that, say, if you're setting rates to achieve a 10% profit margin and Mill Valley Refuse Service's actual profit margin is below that, they don't have a recourse to ask for that to be made up. So your prior question around stacking it does kind of cut both ways for the company. If their projections are off, or there's some triggering event in the marketplace, such as the Chinese national sword that results in an increase or an expense or a decrease in revenue, they are in the position of having to live with that. They can adjust it going forward, but there isn't a retroactive mechanism for that on the downside. So I think it does cut both ways, and likely has over the course of time.
Great, thank you, Leela, and thank you everybody who gave responses there. Do we have any other questions from council members? And if not, I've got a couple. I think my first one is probably for you, Jim, or maybe Jennifer. And it kind of builds on what Fred and Leela were asking. But we saw almost an 8% increase in rates last fall, and that was justified as being due to the added expenses or the decreased revenues of doing business during COVID, which I think we all understand makes perfect sense. But I'm just trying to grapple with, should we expect, like you said, Jim, today's the day that businesses are back open, restaurants are back open, full capacity. And I totally understand that, things are not going to snap back overnight, and be the way they were. And it's going to take time for, consumers, I think, to feel comfortable going back to stores and businesses and whatnot. So it's going to be a ramping up. But should we expect in the next, say, year, when you guys come back in April, to see a substantial, on the order of 8% or so decrease in our rates?
I would be surprised if there was that big of a decrease. That would require require two things. One, no increase in our expenses at all, and two, an enormous increase in commercial revenues. Not that those things couldn't happen, but if they did, then yes, the increased revenues, the stable or lowering costs would positively impact rates for all ratepayers. So those are the factors that would go into that. This year, one thing, for example, it's not even just the lack of, or the lower commercial revenue that impacted this year's rate increase and our rate request. There was also substantial increases industry-wide, not just for us, for insurance costs across the board. And I'm not sure that I can explain the insurance industry, but we got hit pretty severely this year. So assuming things like that don't happen in the next year, and let's all hope for a resurgence of commercial activity, then hopefully we can come in next year with more positive news.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is might be for Amy, our town attorney. Not sure, but I was just reading through our franchise agreement because I was trying to, get a better sense of this concept of fair return. And so I saw on page 16 of our franchise agreement, section 16F, I'm going to quote from the agreement now. It says, the parties agree, however, that should town approve rates that are equal to collectors' allowable costs for the relevant period, plus 10% of those allowable costs, plus pass-through costs for the relevant period, collectively the operating margin method, the rate shall be deemed reasonable and to provide the collector a fair return. So essentially saying that what this definition of a fair return through this calculated through this operating margin method is allowable cost of doing business plus a 10% margin. And I understand that there are costs that you guys incur that are not able to be passed on that way, but just wanted to paraphrase there. And so then it goes on to say, the parties acknowledge, however, that the operating margin method is not the only basis upon which the town may set. And I think this starts to speak to Leela and Fred's question. It's not the only basis upon which the town may set, disapprove, condition, or approve rates in the future, and that other reasonable methods of establishing rates that provide a fair return to the collector may be utilized by the town, even if those methods should permit or establish rates less than those which the operating margin method might otherwise allow or indicate. So the language of the franchise agreement suggests that there are other ways of calculating what a reasonable rate is. And so I'm kind of just curious for for the town attorney here, is this something that, to your knowledge, that we've looked into in the past, or I feel like this is, I think, my maybe fourth rate increase in my 3 years on the council, and so I've never heard the discussion of this come up. I've never seen this this language get sort of delved into. So it's possible it's been discussed before my time and I just missed those discussions. But I was just kind of curious, where does this lead? What are these sort of other options that I think Leela was really trying to dig into and ask about with regards to how these rates could be calculated?
You raise a good question. It's a 16-year-old franchise agreement, I believe. So, and I am relatively new as your interim town attorney. So I don't know if historically there's been debate about this or not. What you've got is, an agreement where the parties had, at the time they entered the agreement, at any rate, kind of set as a baseline what their definition of, fair rate of return is. But it is somewhat of a baseline, and it does allow for any other reasonable method. And I think for that, you know, you would look at kind of industry norms, what are comparable agreements among comparable sized cities. And it would be likely have to be something that the parties are going to agree upon, or else you head into arguments of breach of contract and litigation. So likely you would look at what other communities are doing and what other, you know, to look at what is reasonable. And I just don't know historically, at least in this agreement, whether there were any different methodologies that had been used.
Great. Thank you very much, Amy. That's helpful. Those are my only two questions for now. I've got more to add during the discussion period, but I just want to say, you know, Jim and Jennifer, I realize these are somewhat pointed questions, and I do not mean this in any way as a knock on you guys or your business. I know you guys are, you know, good people and that you run an honest business. I think there's just, you know, some things that need to be analyzed here with the contract language, but that's all. Any other questions from town council members? Yeah, Leela.
Sorry, just one last one. I know we got at least one public comment kind of talking about the services provided and the extra trash days and what you're allowed to put out. And my assumption is that this is not the appropriate time to discuss those factors, but I wonder if someone can speak to, you know, when would be for the members of the public who may have concerns about like that.
I could just say that if anyone has questions about extra pickups or all of that, our website provides all of that information.
I mean, they had a concern that they had the information, they didn't like it. They wanted the service to be different than it is, which I'm assuming is laid out in the contract or, you know, somewhere else. Doesn't have to do with the rate increase or not. So I'm just sort of wondering if we can, if someone can speak to when would be an appropriate time for that person to raise these concerns.
You know, Leela, I'm going to say that I think that is germane public comment to what we're discussing here, because I think we're discussing, you know, we're discussing a rate for service, but I think inherent to that discussion is what the service is that we're talking about a rate for. Amy, you can stop me if I'm, you know, getting out of bounds here, but I think that would be perfectly fine public comment to have at this meeting.
Yeah, I agree.
I could throw in one. I am guessing that a lot of the complaints about service have to do with recycling and what is allowed in the recycling bin, which items have been, especially plastic items, the ones acceptable have been reduced a lot in the past few years. And we don't own a recycling processing plant. We have always taken our material to one plant or another. We take everything now to Marin Sanitary, and these are the items that their processing plant accepts. And the basis of their acceptance of these items is really market based. It's what they can actually sell, as opposed to sort out and throw into the landfill. So if that's what those questions that you may have heard are all about, it's really got to do with the fact that China stopped buying our material several years ago. And at that time, they were taking just about anything you wanted to throw in the can. And it turned out to be a lot of garbage, and a lot of that stuff, which we always thought were actually being recycled in China. It turns out they would be separating out the good from the bad, and the bad would get so sorted out. And I think that's why we have, not the only reason, I'm going to blame it all on China, but it's why we have a large plastic garbage patch in our oceans these days. It's because we were thinking that every type of plastic could be put into a recycle can and was going to get recycled, and it's just not the case.
Thank you, Jim. Fred, I saw your hand. I just want to go to Garth because he's had his hand up for a couple minutes here.
Thanks. He may be answering my question if it's related to methodology. Go ahead.
And it's actually related to the question of town's recourse with respect to the prospects of greater revenue generation due to economic recovery, especially in the commercial sector. So, and I haven't had to look at this specific provision before, and I can't speak to whether it's repeated in other Mill Valley Refuse franchise agreements, but certainly in the towns, it's section 16L. At any time, the town may require collector to establish that the rates it is charging are fair and reasonable and otherwise conform with the terms and conditions of this franchise agreement. And then it goes on to say, in the event after its analysis of collector's records, statements, documents, yada, 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 town determines that an adjustment to the collector's base rates may be advisable, then you can set a public hearing in order to consider an adjustment downward. So you actually do, based on this reading, I think have the ability to kind of trigger, a rate application review kind of in the other direction if you provide reasonable notice and kind of go through a similar process. You actually do have that provision in section 16L.
Great, thank you, Garth. Fred.
Yeah, just real quick, Garth, because I think in your slides, you had the methodology being used for revenue, for the fees and stuff like that. I think you said, you did, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said when it's reasonable, correct? And in part two to that, is that what other is being used throughout Marin County, other areas, that methodology, or is it all a mixed bag?
There are different methodologies than this throughout the rest of the county. So our finding of reasonableness of the projections is it's based on current subscription levels and current rates and actual experience of the company. And, I'm not one to say I know any better about what the economic recovery is going to be than what their actual current practice is. And we debated that at some length during the course of the review. For other methodologies throughout Marin County, you don't necessarily have this ability to call for a quote unquote kind of base year review on an annual basis. In Marin Sanitary Service, that's somewhat restricted. It's once every 5 years, but it can come from either party, either the franchisees or the collectors. And for other parts of the county, it's either not really something that they have afforded to them and within the agreement, and it's set more to a CPI-like adjustment on a regular basis, or is restricted by certain years in which a base year or detailed review, I use those terms interchangeably, may be triggered either by the company or by the public agency. What is common amongst all public agencies in Marin County and generally speaking elsewhere throughout the state is the concept of an annual adjustment of some sort. Really the question is that determined by actual costs plus a margin, or is it set to a CPI-like adjustment, or is it a fixed percentage increase? But by and large, there are annual adjustments that are applied to all these contracts and generally speaking, all these rates throughout the state.
Okay, thanks.
Does that answer your question, council member?
Yep, thank you.
Great, thank you, Fred. Any other questions for staff, MVRS, or consultants? And if not, we'll go ahead and turn this over to public comment. So any members of the public who'd like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. And we will start with Lucinda Smith. And Lucinda, you should be able to unmute yourself whenever you're ready.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I had a couple of questions because I know that this has always been the garbage collection service for Corte Madera the 50 years I've lived here. Is there ever kind of a bidding process that is done by the town for competitive purposes as opposed to just a new rate application being made? Another one is, I think the answer was with regard to projections and what the basis of it is, whether it was based on the previous year, which COVID, of course, 2020 would be a very unusual year to use as a basis. So I was just wondering about that, whether it was 2019 or 2020, or what was the basis for the projections going forward? And also, I'd like to go back to the question about what is included in the recycle bucket. And I think a better education program for the public would be very applicable and very helpful, because I went to a seminar and learned what was acceptable and what was not. And it very much makes a difference when I walk down the street and see neighbors that have their buckets filled with plastic bags full of stuff, which I think is not acceptable. And I think that the public needs to be advised and better educated. Lastly, when will the recycle operations up in San Rafael reopen? Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Lucinda. And just so everybody knows, we're going to go through all our public comment, and then when we close public comment, we'll ask staff and MVRS and R3 as appropriate to respond to any points that were raised by members of the public. I'm not seeing any other hands up from callers on the line right now. Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments on this item? And then we've got another hand that just went up. Well, while you're checking, let's bring on Phyllis.
Good evening. I have two questions. One is on the franchise agreement. Is it something that's in perpetuity, or is it a set amount of time and then it's renewable? And when it's renewable, is it renegotiable? Because it seems to be from what you've been saying, here is the agreement and you're going to live with it. The other question is going a little bit back in time, but last year there was a big increase for, especially for people like me who live in the flat area. And in going through the rates recently, I looked, we in Corte Madera are the only town within Mill Valley Refuse that doesn't have the 3 different zones, I guess they call them. The flat going all the way up to the hills. And those who live in the flat got quite an increase. And I am wondering why Corte Madera is the only town that did this. And after having such a large increase last year, why we're having any increase this year. And I'd like to know why the other towns did not have to have an increase. So those would be my questions. If I may say one thing for Mr. Yavaroni, I don't know if I said it right, Jim. You mentioned about insurance, and I have experience with public entity insurance, and I don't know if you're within a JPA with other refuse companies or dealing directly with an insurance company, but public entities are wise to put their insurance out to bid every year, or at least every 2 years. If you don't, you're asking for the insurance company to just feel it's okay to start raising rates. And it will do that to you as an individual company or to a number of companies that are a JPA, because even when you're self-insured, there is the excess insurance that goes up and up and up. So that's my advice to you after saying that your insurance went up so much. And that's it.
Great, thank you very much, Phyllis. And I'm not seeing any other hands up right now. So Rebecca, let's go to emailed comments if you don't mind.
Okay, let me just check to see if anything new has come in. And we did not receive any additional emailed public comments, but I will read the 2 that came in that I added, that were added to the agenda and sent to the council and made available to the public this afternoon. Let me start the time. The first one is from Catherine Chaffin, who says, I regret that I will not be able to attend. However, I am not in favor of a rate increase. They had one fairly recently whereby they increased our rate for Mandera Coke Road to cover additional expenses that they incurred for Horse Hill, etc. I'll have to review the numbers, yet a rate increase seems expensive as the rates seem somewhat high now. I can't imagine them becoming more. I live on Social Security and such an increase would be difficult. Best regards, Catherine Chaplin. The second one is from Seven Shaw, who says, Dear council members, I am writing this letter to object to the level of service we receive from Mill Valley Refuse Service, in particular, their agreement to pick up extra garbage 4 times per year. This letter has no negative reflection on the friendly, courteous drivers who pick up our garbage and recycling. Recently, I had a small, torn, lightweight aluminum foldable beach chair and a small nylon outdoor umbrella that needed to be trashed, and neither fit in my regular 20-gallon garbage can. I called Mill Valley Refuse and asked them to pick up the 2 items as extra garbage pickup items. I was told they would charge me an extra $8 for each item because the items were considered furniture. This policy is ridiculous. Who among us doesn't have a broken lawn chair or a torn umbrella that needs to be trashed at least once, twice, or 4 times per year? Mill Valley Refuse has made it impossible to get rid of anything that is broken or just old. Mill Valley Refuse is not giving the residents of the town a good value for the money we pay for their service. I called Mill Valley Refuse on Friday, June 11th, and asked about their extra garbage pickup policy. I was told you can't put out furniture or appliances. What is the point of extra garbage pickup if you can't put out furniture or appliances? I was told it would cost $40 to pick up a twin mattress, a range of $50 to $120 to pick up an old couch. I was told I had an option of renting a small debris box for $149 or a larger one for $348 if I had multiple items like a twin mattress, old furniture, carpeting, etc. to trash. Surely I am not the only person hoping to get rid of some old household items. Because they put so many limitations in place, I have not put out extra garbage items in years because none of the items I want to trash fit into the definition of extra garbage pickup. San Francisco residents through Sunset Scavenger and Golden Gate Refuse Companies are provided 2 extra garbage pickup days a year where they can put out bedroom, living room, dining room furniture, appliances, electronics, etc. They can put out 20 items per year. Novato Sanitary District also allows 4 extra garbage pickups a year. The difference in their service is this. Residents of Novato can put out 7 bags or up to 3 cubic yards of material, or a couch or furniture or carpeting. Why don't we have the level of service other surrounding communities have? We also pay more for our garbage collection services than Novato residents. Ecology, Sonoma, and Petaluma allows residents 2 extra garbage pickups a year, including a couch, refrigerator, stove, mattress, and box spring, water heater, the list goes on. I think the level of service Mill Valley Refuse provides to Corte Madera residents is subpar and needs to be looked at and explored, with other refuse companies in the area providing a higher level of service to their customers. Respectfully, Seven Shaw. And those were the 2 emailed public comments received.
Great, thank you very much. And we've got another hand up from Juliana Goldrosen, so we'll go to her next.
It's actually Barbara Solomon. Can you hear me? Oh,
Yes.
Juliana is my daughter, and she must have used my laptop at one point, so I apologize for that. So I'm sorry, I'm just jumping into this, and I'll be quick. Based on everything I've heard tonight, I actually object to this rate increase, given Mill Valley Refuse got in, what was it, an 8% increase last year? Last year was a tough year for every public agency in the country. And I think Mill Valley Refuse should grin and bear it like every other agency. I really urge the Corte Madera Town Council not to agree to this increase. I know a lot of the older folks in our town are really opposed to it. I listen to the mayor's talks every 2 weeks. People are opposed to this increase, and you're going to have a backlash if you agree to it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. And I do not see any other hands up at this time, so we will close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion on this item. Who'd like to start us off? Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, a couple things. First off, regarding the issue of commercial, I would not bank on commercial picking up dramatically, which I know that Mill Valley Refuse is not. In my conversations with restaurant owners, which I've had several the last couple of weeks, and we started going out again, they can't get employees. They just can't stay. I asked a couple of them, so you're going to open all the way up? And they said, we don't have the people. We can't find anybody. So I think this is all going to take longer than we think it's going to, and we need to understand that and accept that up front. Also, I have been through a number of these now with Mill Valley Refuse, and I can tell you this from having worked with them. The numbers have always been justified. The numbers have always been reasonable. And they have made several major adjustments to service in the years I've been on the council. For example, they've adjusted the recycling, I don't know how many times, adding cans, adding what they take out. They made a big change a few years ago where they started a service to actually take cans down the steps for residents who could not do it anymore. I have a number of neighbors who use that service, may use it myself one day. So they've been very accommodating, and I think this rate increase is very reasonable. And as far as the 4 garbage pickups a year ago, I think that's also reasonable. I believe, and maybe Jim can answer this, I think you're allowed, there's a cubic yard limit on how many bags, or maybe it's 20 bags you're allowed, but it's actually fairly generous. So I think the policy is good, and I would go ahead and move to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And I think actually that might be a good transition to ask Todd, would you be willing to speak to some of the questions that were brought up by public commenters?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I have a couple comments. I'm not sure overall that I think Jim, you may be better situated on a few of these, or Jennifer, and I'm happy to jump in.
I'd be happy to jump in, but there were a lot, and I'm not sure which to jump in on. Maybe I guess I could start, but perhaps on the cleanups. It's possible. Well, then, first of all, I think that that person probably could have had an umbrella and a lawn chair, if that's what those things were, picked up for free during a using one of their cleanups. Really, if there was a communication about that suggested that it couldn't be from our office, I think that really a visit out to see what they had from one of our field supervisors would have cleared up that, you know, that a lawn chair is not a piece of furniture. And so unfortunately, it sounds like there was not enough communication to get that person's things picked up. I don't know about other companies. Refrigerators and large pieces of furniture have really never been allowed as part of a cleanup. So, and if it's done elsewhere that way, well, I don't know what to say about that. We have had the same rules in place for our cleanups for a very long time. And usually people are able to do their spring cleaning or year-long cleaning and really throw out a lot of stuff. We certainly do take, I think it is 21 bags or 3 cubic yards per pickup. So we take quite a lot of stuff during those cleanups. I'm sorry, this one person seemed to have only items that that were not included. Jennifer, did you have something to jump in on?
Well, I was going to talk about the whole recycling issue.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, when we went to dual stream, it was really painful because a lot of people, what they did is they took their 32-gallon can and they thought, oh, I can throw anything in my recycling can and then reduce my garbage. So we had a lot of that. That was about 4 years ago. Then we went to dual stream, and then so all of that was contaminated, and we stopped taking. We had to because Marin Sanitary wouldn't take it. So we educated our customers. We have next door, which my mother, who's lived in Corte Madera since 1964, she puts out a thing. Today's, newspaper week, whatever. So, but anyway, what happened is that people started catching on. And then also on our website, we have this amazing tool that you can actually type in an item and it tells you where to put it. And it tells you if it goes in the garbage or if it goes in whatever bin it goes into. So there is education. There is also a postcard going out, as a matter of fact, this coming week with our new dual stream program from July to June of next year. And then it has all of the new information on it as what plastics can go in and so on. So that should be very helpful. And it's also on the website.
Thanks, Jennifer. And I'll just add, and maybe Amy might want to jump in on Phyllis's question as well, or anybody else. But what I'll say is, no, I don't think that over the last 5 years, I can at least speak to, we're in a 20-year agreement. It is a good franchise agreement compared to our cohorts, both under Mill Valley Refuge and within the county. As slide 7 speaks to, Corte Madera, when you look at the 32, I believe it's the 32-gallon rate, compared both within Mill Valley Refuge and our cohorts to the north of us, Larkspur, San Anselmo, San Rafael, Fairfax, Ross, that have similar geography to us, you can see that we're right there. We're either better or the same. You know, what happened over the last 5 years, I think it was my first year, we had the big recycling, the issues with China and what it did to the rates. It was a tough conversation. It was a double-digit increase. Following the 8% increase, you know, before COVID, you know, those are understandably, those were tough discussions that we've had. And we're one of the few agencies that had, you know, the 3 levels where we broke it down, I think, within our town, right? There are the 3 different levels of costing. And so we had a really good public discussion over this last year. And what I'll tell you is, you know, where we landed is, again, on slide 7 of Garth's report. We're seeing this across the board. I don't think anybody likes it. You know, we do an analysis as we're doing tonight with R3 of moving forward. Past practice says that those numbers have been accurate. We have a good relationship. You know, the town of Corte Madera also receives other services that in these comparisons, other agencies don't enjoy. You know, we have street sweeper services within our town. You know, we also, you know, have access, you know, with our major garbage bins and our porta potties, and we get great return with this agreement with Mill Valley Refuse that our cohorts, not all of them have across the board. So it's not even an apples to apples comparison. So, and I will say, when it comes to customer service, you know, I'll take ownership of that email. I didn't know that happened. What I can tell anyone on this call, as I've said the last 5 years, because it's true, when there's an issue like that and it's brought to our attention, we pick up the phone, we have a conversation with our partners with Mill Valley Refuse, and we problem solve. And even if it's not something in the agreement, I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, they do it anyway. And then we find a way to make sure that we can educate and make sure it doesn't happen again. Their customer service it is good and it's outstanding. And so I have no problem saying that. So I don't feel like we're stuck in this agreement. When we go back and we have an evaluation, as we're talking about tonight, when we talk to our cohorts, when we really look at this franchise agreement, what do we receive compared to those in our county? This is a good agreement. Is it perfect? Is there things that we need to work on? Staff is ready. If there's been some good questions of council and the community tonight, we're happy to do that work and come back to you. If the council wants us to go backwards, similar, I guess, to what Mill Valley is doing, and do an analysis of, you know, one of the prior increases to see if it was justified, I think that's fair. We can certainly look at that and do that. I think that's appropriate. But you know, I think we can anticipate in regular years a 1 to 4+% increase. I mean, that's just standard in these agreements across the board. Even in our JPA agreements with our cohorts in the county, things increase on an annual basis. So you can, this year when I saw the increase, I thought, hey, this is it's a 1% increase. I'll take that. You know, I still think, you know, that we had some really tough increases over the last 5 years. It's been explained and evaluated and justified. Again, when we come out of that after 5 years of those major increases and we compare ourselves to our cohorts, we still have a better franchise agreement with better services, and we are right where we need to be within this county. Are there other options down the road? I think we can always certainly talk about it, but from a customer service, from a partnership standpoint, I can say that Mill Valley Refuge has served staff in our community well.
Great, thank you very much, Todd. And thank you, Jim, as well. Garth, I see your hand up.
Mary, I just wanted to help with a couple of the other questions I heard. There was one around the San Rafael Recycling Center. I believe that's in response to the buyback center, which I do know that Marin Sanitary Service did close. That's a part of a statewide trend of such closures, mostly due to the fact that the state's payments for redemption of CRV materials, the 5 cents on the bottle and can, has not covered the cost of those operations. And so there's been a wholesale shutdown of those statewide. Unfortunately, I know Marin Sanitary Service did decide to shut down during the pandemic in response to that. I don't know yet if there are plans for them to reopen. There was a couple of comments about bearing the increase on fixed incomes. There is a rate discount available, and I believe it's referenced in the rate sheets policies attached to the staff report. That is something that 20% discount, I believe, for folks enrolled in PG&E's care program that Mill Valley Refuse extends. And then there was a question around the projections. The projections were based on, the expense projections are based on 2020 actual expenses, which, largely for most hauling operations weren't significantly changed in response to COVID. It was the revenues that were. So we didn't use actual revenues as a projection. We used current subscription levels and current rates to project what revenues would be going forward. And that's pretty standard practice. And I don't think that that results in like an undercounting. The only way it would is with respect to the commercial subscriptions being lower right now because of the shutdown, but it's not looking at the actual amount received by the company in 2020. So those were a few that I heard that I wanted to help respond to. Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot. Thanks to everybody who helped respond to public comment. And let's go back to council member comments now. So do we have any further comments from council members on this item? Yeah, Leela.
Just a quick question, Todd or Amy. I understand the contract says, Mill Valley Rescues can bring this application to us on an annual basis. Anything about what is supposed to guide whether that is approved? I mean, is it, you know what I mean? I'm sort of trying to understand, is this, if the contract allows for increases based on certain factors, and those factors are present, and we have a third-party auditor who's confirmed, the validity of those or the reasonableness of those. Because I'm trying to understand what would be the basis on which town council would not approve the increase.
Let's speak. I don't have it up in front of me. I can find it, but the provision on this question. I think it's in the 16s.
Yeah.
It's section 16.
Yeah. And I don't know if we want to continue. Leela, do you have any other comments or questions or anything while Todd maybe looks into that? No. Okay, let's go to Fred.
Yeah, just along the same lines as Lisa, I guess another way to look at it, and that is, if we don't approve this rate increase and it's tied to certain provisions within contract, are we essentially in breach of contract?
Right. Good question, Fred.
Yeah, so section 16 is the process for that, and maybe we go through questions and answer others, and then we can pull that up maybe on the screen and walk through it with Amy.
Sounds good. All right, Charles.
Yeah, so the first time I went through one of these rate increases was last year, and I felt like I really dug into it very deeply. And I've been looking in and monitoring the service since. And I can say that for me personally, if you do reach out to Jim and the whole group, it's a much better customer service than you're going to find with the biggest server providers. I have found that he's always been straightforward, even into uncomfortable truths, which I always appreciated about previous council and relationships and how things had allowed to continue with the hillside versus the lower areas, and how that rate needed to basically flat but share between, because you're robbing Paul to pay Piper, the other one. So go back to those and listen to those conversations if you're curious about why that happened. I also he was very honest about what happened during the China recycling thing. I think that was unfortunate, because I really do think that as consumers, and Eli, you've talked about it before, I think that there is some kind of acceptance that we as consumers have to have a responsibility about what we take in, not just what we expect other people to take out. And so, I've definitely seen that, and I'm guilty of it too, when you get stuck with something like, can you pawn it off on them or not? And ultimately they're, that they do the business of taking weekly trash. And I have to say that the new recycling program with the two cans has made it a lot easier for me personally to be able to give them cleaner resources. And I've really been happy with that, the paper and the plastic being sorted, and then I tend to be able to just give them exactly what they asked for, and then the food paper to the compost, and so that has really helped. I think ultimately what I would ask is, And I've also looked into the programs about seniors and people with disabilities and rate issues. And I definitely believe that they help in all those regards as well, which are a lot of the people that are concerned about these kind of increases. So, I also feel like 2% is really, the cost of living increase that any kind of salary or profit, is a margin that everybody accepts as growth within the economy every year. So it seems in line, given gas prices and everything else that's gone up. And then I'd like to remind everyone with the 8% increase, that had to do with new equipment that they were buying to provide better services, and that equipment ultimately had been deferred, and that was a cost-saving measure that he was probably doing before, and not something that ultimately was just cashing in or anything like that. So what I've appreciated is their honesty, and so therefore they're very easily defensible, and the decision to accept the increase is also defensible. However, I would acknowledge that ultimately it continues to come into question with the residents, the overall contract and everything. And Todd Cusimano has informed me and everybody else that ultimately that comes up for review, and that will be reviewed for the best interest of the residents, right? And all I would say is ultimately Jim is just a transporter. They pick it up and they take it somewhere else. And if you really want to get to the bottom of stopping the increase of how much it costs to get rid of garbage, find ways to venture capital fund ways to use all the less desirable plastics in useful things around the world. The first thing I went to last time when China first started doing that, and I thought, how can I deal with this increase? California had a project where they were funding public-private relationships to start new companies to help figure out what to do with all this recyclable material. Figure it out, go apply for that grant, work with them, and that kind of thing. Those are the positive ways that you can actually change it. Otherwise, the increases are just going to continue. So don't beat up poor Jim is what I'm saying. And you can blame me, but I'm not responsible either. Amazon. And, the other thing is ultimately they've been really good about picking up all the extra cardboard that I think all of us have dealt with. And ultimately they make money by it, but it's a substantial increase, I think, more so than just what they lost in deferred commercial, which I'd also like to acknowledge. And ultimately, whether we fold it into the contract to take away refrigerators and mattresses, or we pay someone else the same cost that it would cost to haul it off, just pay somebody else and don't make all the residents ultimately own that decision about whether they want to dispose of stuff that way, is my response to that. So with that, I can definitely make the approval. And I thank them for the discussion every year to help everyone understand and come to agreement with this.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Charles. I think you hit it right on the head in a number of regards. I think, this rate application that's before us, this 1.2%, I think is perfectly reasonable. I have no problem with it at all. And all other things being equal, barring national sword, barring COVID, whatnot, this is the type of thing that I would expect to see and easily approve year over year. But what I worry about is the very expensive pattern that it falls into. Of these increases that seem to go up, sometimes by reasonable amounts, sometimes jumping up quite sharply. But do they ever come down? Not that I've seen, and not, it sounds like maybe one time in the last 25 years. And this is no knock at all on MVRS. I think there's no question that you guys have been totally faithful and totally on the up and up with adhering to the contract. My beef is not with you guys. My beef is with what's in the franchise agreement that we, Corte Madera, agreed to 15 years ago. I think it's things like, this operating margin method, is set to target, I won't say guarantees, but it's set to target a 10% profit on, more or less the cost of doing business. And you look at, a situation like we have right now, it's like, what other businesses achieved a 10% profit margin this year besides maybe Amazon and Pfizer? And it's like, did residents' income go up by 10%? No. So is it really a fair return in situations like the one that we're in now? I think there's a big question there. I think when collector revenue drops because businesses are closed, a lot of those workers who have just been laid off live in our communities and their garbage bills are going up. So I think, what I'm getting at is that I think the pricing incentives in our franchise agreement are structurally wrong for an essential public service, right? I think, for services like this that everybody relies on, the pricing incentive should be set up to incentivize efficiency and cost effectiveness, right? And this almost feels like the opposite, right? Because it's like if the cost of doing business goes up for any reason, and it's legitimate, I don't question that in the least, but whenever the cost of business goes up, the dollar amount of the profit margin goes up, barring again these non-allowable costs. So I just, I think this is a discussion that we need to have in the future about our franchise agreements with our haulers. I know our contract with MBRS comes up in 2026, so I think we need to look closely at this. And I think that ties into some of the public comments that we've been hearing about, varying levels of satisfaction with MVRS for a host of reasons. And some I can kind of see, some I don't agree with. But it's things ranging from, we hear pricing, we hear level of service, we hear what do they take, what do they not take, we hear customer service, what have you. I think maybe in the future we should look at some sort of survey that looks at not only what we pay, because I understand that we have that data and it's really helpful, but what we're paying for, right? Because if you're paying a little bit less for way worse service or a little bit more for way better service, obviously that's not apples to apples there. So I do think that residents have brought up some really good points that I think definitely need to be looked at closely going forward. I think this rate application in particular, I'm totally comfortable with, and I just wanted to thank Garth and R3 for their critical read here that halved our rate increase. So that's my 2 cents on this. Any other comments from council members? And if not, maybe we'll check in with Todd and see if he's got anything for us.
Oh, you guys, no more questions? Okay, Amy, do you want to jump in? I think, and I'm trying to find the right page, Amy, but it might be around page 32, but in section 16, it's section 1 where it speaks specifically to after receipt of a timely base rate change application from the collector on any given year. Do you see that? Are we able to put that up, Rebecca? That specific paragraph, because I think it speaks to this question.
Yes, I have it open too.
Okay. I just want to.
Okay, you tell me if I'm looking at the page that you're thinking about. Page 32.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it there. It's the section that speaks specifically to the receipt of a timely base change application.
Hey, is it not page 27?
It might be. I'm sorry, I'm looking at a.
No, I mean, it probably, contracts
Might be in
tend to
15. Yeah, keep going. Okay.
But there is some language on page 27 in section F that seems to make it not suggest that we don't really have a lot of discretion here.
Okay. Keep going to page 27, Rebecca.
There you go, top of that page. Oh, that's a different page 27 than I have.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I'm having the same problem.
I
I'm just gonna read this, and Amy, if you can find the section. So after
I think the copy of the contract that was linked may not be the final contract, because I know I believe Garth emailed a paragraph to us that's not the same as the paragraph in the contract that I have. So I'm not sure. There is
but this is consistent language. I need to find, I'm sorry you all on this one, but this is
16M1.
Okay, I have the one open that was filed with the signed resolution for adoption.
Hey, Todd and Amy,
I opened the wrong link.
out of curiosity, is this something you think that's going to involve more research instead of trying to do it on the fly tonight?
No, I don't think. I think the key part within the language, the key part is there's a couple things. One, are we in receipt of a timely base rate application from the collector? The answer is yes, it was timely. The second one is, did the town adequately analyze the request? And did the town notice at least one public hearing in order for the town council to object and hear any objections to this request? And the answer is yes, we've done that as well, right? We're here. We actually had an analysis by R3, It was actually, the rate was adjusted down by a percentage point. And so those check boxes are there. Now, we could certainly then, as outlined in your options, we could adopt the resolution. You could give us alternative direction. You could send us back for more analysis, but the bottom line is, I believe that just based on how I read it, and Amy jump in, that we would be in breach because we've checked those boxes. This has been analyzed. It's been submitted on a timely fashion. We're having a public hearing. We followed the process. And so unless there are questions specific to the 1% increase that R3 missed or that we're missing as staff in our evaluation, we would be in a different discussion. And so that's my understanding of being through this 5 times now and looking at the agreement. The agreement's pretty long. I'm sorry. I can go back and find the specific language, but that is my understanding. And Amy, unless you have, a different evaluation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the franchise agreements are complicated because we're really talking about, it's almost a 3-way transaction, because the Mill Valley is paying the town a franchise fee for the ability to be the sole refuse collector on behalf of the town. And the existing agreement that the town signed on to in 2006 says the town shall set rates at a level that will endeavor to provide a fair return to collector. The agreement sets up a process for that, which requires the application for the rate increase. It gives the town the right to have the third party review it to make sure everything is right. And then upon that review, look at the rates and determine that is fair. I think just a couple other things I want to point out is the town at any time has the right to look at the records and so forth. So if the town wanted to engage in additional monitoring about whether the rates during the year are reflective of what's set, the town does have the right to do that. There's also, the contract does address them, and this is really for folks who are at home who are listening, is there is a complaint process that if you send in a written complaint to the company, they have to respond, I believe, by the end of the next business day and try to work it out. They can also contact the town manager, but you can also contact the town manager, and the town manager has the right to look at the complaint and see if there's a way to resolve it. So I think that's important for the public to know. The concern that I have is Garth did send a paragraph of 16M1, which is different from the 16M1 that I have on the linked agreement.
Amy, are you looking at the one that's linked with the resolution?
Yes.
Okay, because that is the signed document.
Right. So I don't know, Garth, if you can.
Page 36. What's page 36?
Well, it's
on our attachment. It's at the bottom.
Page 36 is the one that I cited in the staff report under options. It's 16M1.
Yeah, that's good at that.
Oops.
Can you hear me?
You're kind of freezing up, Todd, a little bit.
I think it's on page 31. Oh no, that's F1. I apologize.
Hey, Amy.
Yes.
Just a quick summary, if I'm hearing you and Todd correctly, it sounds like per the contract, there's a process that Mill Valley Refuge has to go through. Todd said they checked all the boxes, so they meet that requirement or those requirements. According to Garth, our outside consultant, the increase they're asking for is a fair return, which is also part of the contract, which we have to give them, correct?
Yes.
So it sounds like they're meeting all the requirements of the contract. So let me know if I'm incorrect. If we deny this rate increase, then we'd be in breach of the contract.
I believe that is correct. Once our outside evaluator looks at the numbers and confirms, comes up with the third-party analysis to analyze whether or not the company prepared its application and its numbers check out, then yes, under this agreement, we are required to ensure the fair rate of return.
Okay, and if we deny the rate increase, then that potentially opens it up for legal ramifications, theoretically.
We would potentially be in breach of our contract, yes.
So it sounds like we have no choice but to approve the increase.
I think that's right, provided that they've met their terms under the agreement, which it appears that they have, then yes, we need to move forward.
Okay, so based upon that, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the rate increase. I just think it's risk versus return.
Fred, Bob made the motion earlier, but you're welcome.
Sorry. I'll second Bob's motion.
And I think, one thing that I'll just add before we go to a vote, I think Leela brought up a number of really good points about, does it make sense for the town to conduct our own reviews of these rate applications periodically? And so like right now, the way we got it set up, R3 comes in once every 3 years, right, and reviews the rate application looking forward. I think Leela's point about a backwards looking review makes perfect sense to make sure that what we've got stacks up with what the reality on the ground was for the prior 3 years. And I think, maybe what we do is we can go ahead and approve this because like we said, this checks unfortunately all the contractual boxes, right? And so this is, it's kind of a done deal. But I think I'm still a little bit hung up on this 8% COVID increase and wondering, is this going to come back down as COVID ramps down, as it is? And I think maybe it makes sense for us to move forward with this, but direct staff that we may, if conditions seem appropriate, conduct our own review, maybe a year into the recovery or whatever, give it some time after the economy is fully reopened, but then look backwards and see, okay, do we still feel like if the rate doesn't come down, do we feel like this COVID rate that we're still being charged is still appropriate? And I think maybe that speaks to kind of all of the concerns. Anyway, so we've got a motion in a second. So Rebecca, we're ready to have a vote. If you are ready to administer one, please.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
and Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you. And then I guess I'll just check in with the council members real quick. Do we want to give staff this direction essentially that, please keep an eye out, a year or so from now going forward, just to even though it won't be a year when R3 does their analysis, let's keep an eye out and see if it makes sense for us to do an in-house analysis of rates at that time, taking the recovery of the economy into account and what may or may not be the facts on the ground with regards to things like commercial collection revenues. Is that something that we want to do?
I think it makes sense. Actually, we just need to make sure that staff calendars it for next year sometime, and then have them, whether they just think we should move forward or not, I think they should come back to council, saying one way or the other, what their recommendation is.
I agree with that. And I would just say, obviously COVID is a weird situation that we hope is not going to repeat itself anytime soon. But I would think we might want to think about instituting, some way of this kind of a review on a regular basis, even if there hasn't been something like COVID, just to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in terms of, confirming that these forecasts, are accurate.
I tend to agree with you, Leela. Any other comments from council members? And if not, then it sounds like at least 3 of us have weighed in affirmatively on this. So I suppose that is something of direction, and we'd love to be able to revisit this discussion at some point in the future as appropriate. And with that, we can close this item. Thank you very much again, Jim and staff and Garth for being here. Appreciate your guys's, answers to our questions. And I'm sorry, I know it was a little bit of a rough reception. And again, this is no reflection on you guys or the job that you're doing. I think what we're all kind of grappling with is the contract language that the town agreed to. And, that is what it is. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Is it possible to make a quick
Absolutely.
Just very quickly, as some of you may know, I'm retiring this year. So this is the last time I will be in front of the town council. 25 years ago, my father passed his shares of this company on to me, and I'm happy to say that this year I've been able to pass my shares on to my son, who is the shop manager at Mill Valley Refuse now. And I just wanted to thank all of you and all of the folks in the town of Corte Madera for just being really great to me personally and our company over all this time. And you've all been great, and past town managers and certain council people. Some of you have been here for a long time, others for a shorter time, but thank you very much. I really appreciate the way I've been treated personally by the town of Corte Madera all these years. Thanks again.
Well, thank you very much, Jim, and we wish you a very happy retirement.
Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you, everybody. And let's see, that was our second public hearing of the night, which brings us to our business items. And our first business item is going to be 6A, and that is discussion and direction to staff to proceed with the proposed minor roof modifications after recent design discussion with the Planning Commission and approval of the addendum to the Corte Madera Town Hall remodel and addition mitigated negative declaration. I'll turn it over to staff.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight is really a follow-up to the May 4th Town Council meeting where the Town Council did approve resolution number 20/2021 to approve the demolition and replace project for the Town Hall project itself. But did request that the staff go to the Planning Commission to further discuss design, potential design modifications to the project as a result of now the decision to demolish the existing town hall building and then rebuild it. And we're here tonight. I'm here with RJ Succo and the rest of the project team, Phil Boyle and Jared Barrio, and of course Todd, and you'll also be hearing from Ron Cappy as well tonight with a relatively brief, but I think important presentation that we'd like to share with you. Really, there's two actions that we're requesting the Town Council consider this evening. The first is really to provide direction. Actually, I'll start with the other one. The first is based on the discussion at May 4th, staff went ahead and contracted with our environmental consultant Circle Point to prepare an addendum to the CEQA analysis that was prepared, the mitigated negative declaration that was approved by the Town Council on February 2nd, and ultimately to address the changed condition of the remodel and turning, now with the proposed demolition of the existing town hall building. So that was done. We're requesting that the Town Council approve the resolution 30/2021 that's attached to your staff report, and that would approve the addendum to the mitigated negative declaration. And then secondly, we're really here, we'd like to talk about having the council consider providing direction for staff to move forward with the proposed design that you're going to see here tonight. And that's really important, as we discussed at the May 4th Town Council meeting, in order to move forward and meet some of the project timeline and schedule. We really need to sort of wrap up this phase of the conceptual design process and move to more engineered plans and specifications. And RJ may want to speak to that a little bit more at this time, and then we can get into a little bit of the Planning Commission discussion that we had on May 25th.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Adam and Mayor Beckman, Vice Mayor, and council members. So I think everything we've done to date, including the most recent return to Planning Commission, has led to what I think is a very positive result, and I'll let the architect and the planning team kind of speak to that. But I did kind of want to emphasize a little bit about where we are in the process and kind of why we want to keep on schedule. So with the goal of really having a fully vetted and ready design package in right around December timeframe, so we're right around 6 months and we haven't gotten into the engineering plans yet. And so we really need all of this time. And really why December is important is that gives us a couple months to put the project out for bid, get a lot of competition, get good bids, open that, award that contract with the hopes of breaking ground right around April 1 or so. And so anytime that we kind of spend kind of further evaluating these concepts just slides that. And then we tend to miss our optimum weather window for construction. And also we end up bidding it later in the year where, a lot of the competition may have already filled up their plate with other jobs and are no longer as motivated. So really it has an impact on cost should we not kind of try to push this forward. But again, I'll just kind of say that, I think I'm happy where we've come and have been happy with the process. And I think it's really been valuable and led to a good product. And I'll turn it over to the rest of the team to speak to that.
Yeah, and just by way of additional background, I think we wanted to report back a little bit on the Planning Commission meeting. We did go to the Planning Commission meeting as directed by the Town Council. We went on May 25th. And I think had a very productive meeting. There wasn't a ton of members, a ton of public comment, I should say. We did get comments from a couple of members, 2 members of the public were sort of commenting on switching, again, the council chambers. We've heard this before, council chambers to the corner of Willow and Tamalpais. And so swapping in that way. We also got a comment letter from John Hale requesting that we really consider historic, some space for historic information archives and even some potential research and storing of some of those important archives of Corte Madera history. We had a good conversation about that. Ultimately, the commission decided that this was the appropriate program, keeping the sort of the program that we have and with this west wing that you're looking at in this slide here as the public permitting center and staff offices, and keeping the council chambers where it has been located. And then we had comments about really the southern roof design, and that was really the emphasis of what we wanted to talk about at that meeting. Again, now looking at this as a new structure. And some of the comments from the commission really focused on trying to create some more visual interest on that south roof form. And so we took those comments to heart, and I think went back and had Ron Cappy and his team really take another look at how to think about those comments and integrate them into what you're seeing here tonight. So I'll let Ron take it from here, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have after the presentation.
Okay, so Honorable Mayor and council members, thank you for reviewing our proposal tonight. I'm sharing my screen. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Everything's good? Okay. Just to review rather quickly, as you know, we had the decision to demolish the existing building. Our proposal now is about 10,900 square feet. Same staff housing of 24 full-time employees plus part-time and seasonal. I wanted to just put up our guiding principles very quickly. We've been reviewing it each time we've done a presentation, but I think we've had steady building height and bulk reduction through the public process. Continue to have a goal of preserving the 3 redwood trees as a natural canopy for an outdoor plaza. Expanding the community room, council chambers need, enlarging the public service counter by 3 times, creating an accessible central lobby with stairs and elevator. And the sustainable design goals have been upgraded from town council, from yourselves, for zero net carbon, including a significant roof mounted solar array, which we'll give an example of in a little bit. and always budget conscious decisions. Wanted to quickly highlight the changes in the footprint because it's not necessarily apparent looking at the 3D images, but we've created more space on the west. We've created a bioswale area near the road here, centered the redwood tree, and then the existing stairwell mechanical structure is gone at this point. So we have a slightly smaller footprint, okay? So this is what we came to you with last time with a hip roof. And to just review the elevations here, the first level is at 18, elevation marker 18. And it's completely flat all the way across now. We had, when we were working with the existing building, we had some step ups we could get rid of. The upper level is at elevation marker 29, so there's 11 feet between the floors. The council roof ridge is at elevation marker 49.9, 50 basically. The permit center is at elevation 54, so it's approximately 4 feet taller than the council chamber. It's a 25-foot high tall building at the west elevation, as viewed from the west elevation. And let's see, the east elevation is 32 feet tall. Okay, that's just to kind of get us oriented in terms of some of the numbers. The elements that were added from the Planning Commission discussion on May 25th was to add a smaller secondary hip roof. There were various ideas discussed at the meeting. This is the one that we've come up with, and we can explain why. New larger windows tie into the corner windows of the council chambers. So we took the same motif that we were doing at the council chambers and brought it over to the service counter area. The wall below the new hip element projects out towards the street. I'll explain that in a minute, and an enhanced main level floor plan. So moving forward, this is what we're looking at now. So the piece that we were speaking about that comes proud of this or comes forward from this hip roof is right here. I think it scales kind of nicely to the what we have going at the over on the council chambers side. And these are the larger window system that I was speaking about that relates to this window system and the windows that we have in the plaza area itself. Now to take a bird's eye view, this is a preliminary, this shows a preliminary layout of solar panels. We had an engineer give us some advice, but it's not been fully engineered. You'll notice that what would seem logical, namely the south roof, is shaded by the redwood trees. So that's the story there. And we're going for 60 kilowatts, and we need to get drill down and really seriously engineer this once we are able to get going. I want to highlight on the west side is now an outside area that has potential. This is that bioswale area that I talked about where we moved the building away from the driveway, and some other outdoor meeting area potential. This, you can see from this point of view, the centering of the tree, which also centers on this dormer. So from the southwest pedestrian view, this is what we're looking at. It comes out about 3 feet. And we actually push part of the building back here. The ADA ramp, a more gracious entry point. Here's another look at it from the Tamalpais Avenue sidewalk side. This is a representation of what solar panels might look like. Here's what I was talking about the continuity of the window system as it comes around. It kind of invites you and brings you into the plaza, brings you towards the public counter. In plan view, real quickly, we left this at the setback line and we pushed this part in. So we reduced some square footage here, but programmatically, continue to meet the needs of staff. A reminder, this is the north elevation, no change there, but now you see the roof form that we're discussing. And I think it blends pretty nicely on a two-story structure, and it creates a little bit of a focal point as well. A straight on look at the west elevation with, again, a representation of solar panels. It's a 10-foot plate to the top of the wall, and then it angles back from the street, from Pixley. Each of these windows are located at workstations or offices. It's very logical, and it's more of a, you get more of a closed down feeling about the administration building versus more of an open feeling with the council chambers, which is appropriate because it's, these are offices. One more look from the northwest perspective of how all the roof forms blend together in this case. That's what I wanted to bring forward for your discussion. It's as you can see, it's similar to what you looked at before. So not to belabor the point, but yet it's also evolved some from the Planning Commission discussion that we had on May 25th. So with that, I will just keep the screen up, but open up for discussion.
Great. Thank you very much, Ron and Adam and RJ. Do we have any questions for council members for staff on this item? And I'm just trying to scroll through here and see if I see any hands up. Leela, is that a hand? Couldn't tell. Okay, no, excellent. Any questions? If I missed anyone, just shout, but I didn't see any. So if that is correct and nobody is shouting, we can go ahead and open this up to public comment. So any members of the public who would like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. And I'll ask Rebecca if we got any emailed public comments on this item.
No, I did not receive any emailed public comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not seeing any hands up. Oh, one just went up from Planning Commissioner Phyllis Metcalf. So we're going to bring her on for public comment.
Hi, I just wanted to thank Ron and compliment him on putting together a very attractive building and thank him for his patience. This has been a 3-year project. And a lot of people who didn't know anything or much about design came up with a lot of ideas that kind of sometimes kept us from moving forward or going backwards. And he worked his way through all of it. And I think he's come up with a building that we can all be very proud of. And I hope the council supports it.
I really appreciate that, Phyllis. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Phyllis. We had another hand up for a moment, but it went back down. So I just want to wait a second and see if that person puts their hand back up before I close public comment. And it looks like that's a no. So we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring this back to the town council for discussion. Who'd like to start us off? Yeah, Bob.
I agree with Phyllis. This has been going on for a long while, and I think we have ended up in a really, really nice place. This is a really nice design. This is going to be a remarkable building, and the staff needs this sooner rather than later. So I would make a motion to approve. Resolution number 30/2021. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Bob. And I saw Charles's hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Phyllis and the Planning Commission. I know Phyllis was really adamant about having it come back to the commission after we approved the financial part of tearing it down, the old building, and the improvements that the Planning Commission made are really nice. And as an advisory committee, I really appreciate the commitment and addition and aesthetics that they added to the project for us to approve. Was really good decision making and working with Ron and RJ and Adam. So thanks.
Great. Thank you, Charles. Any other comments from council members? If not, I'll go ahead and speak. I promise to my colleagues this will be the last of my strong opinions for the night. I think this is overall really good. I think we're close, and I really appreciate the tweaks that the Planning Commission just put on it. I think what was presented at the last Planning Commission meeting before the Planning Commission got to work on it. I thought that the service wing there, that west wing, was just like a kind of a faceful, this large pyramid of roofing tiles essentially. And I think that what the Planning Commission, helped do by articulating that little bump out in the front, what they did with the fenestration, adding that hip roof, I think is really nice. I'm just wondering, I still feel like I feel like that service wing, it still draws the eye quite strongly, just, given the mass of the mass of the roofing and the mass of roof shingles that we're seeing. And I'm wondering if staff explored any options. Let me preface this by just saying I also totally appreciate the effort to this point and totally understand the time imperative here. So I don't want to slow this thing down at all. But I think minor changes to roof geometry are not gonna prevent you guys from putting together construction documents. I'm just curious if folks explored either making that little bump out a gable instead of a hip, so that it kind of mirrors the council chamber. I think what you guys presented to us on May 4th, I liked a lot, because I thought that sort of symmetry made it look very stately and very civic, which I think is a good thing in my opinion for a town hall to have. I think we could easily recapture that by just changing that small new hip to a gable. So I'm curious, what staff and council members might think about that. And then if that's not favored, then I wonder if we could potentially cut off the excess height of that tall. I mean, the tallest point on this building right now by a decent margin is over the service wing. And I'm wondering if we can basically just truncate that larger pyramid at the height where it's the same height as the smaller hip that's been bumped out. I think either, in my opinion, my personal opinion, either of those changes would, make, take this project from an A to a standout A+. So curious to know if other folks are open to those ideas, but I just feel like right now it's this sort of pyramid of roof shingles on the corner there that to me sort of steals the show from the rest of what's going on that I think is all really beautiful. So I'm done with my
Ron, do you want to go ahead and
I was just going to say we did explore that gable idea with staff and found that it was it really hung heavy in that corner. I don't have that image with me here, but I could show it to you. I'd be happy to share it. And it just seemed like a really heavy gesture in that corner. Another thing we looked at was a clear story in this area, but that drew too much attention to that roof area. That would lighten, what you're talking about is that height question. So we did look at those. I'd be happy to share some of the, ones that we rejected along the way.
That'd be great. I'd just love to kind of get that full story there.
And I think to lower the height, that would change the slope of the roof essentially, Ron, and you did look at that.
Oh, excuse me, Adam, I meant to essentially just truncate it so that it's hipped on 4 sides but flat on top. I don't know whether we have rooftop MEP equipment that needs somewhere to be located on a flat roof, but it could be, it could be behind those hips, for example. So I was just thinking that to my mind, that would de-emphasize the service wing and allow a little more spotlight to shine on the incredibly beautiful council chambers.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we didn't show when we were at the Planning Commission, this is, I think, probably a better angle to look at it just because it's more of a pedestrian angle. And we also sort of we didn't have this image at the Planning Commission meeting. We had more of the straight on. I think actually when you have the angles, you also tended to be stay the sort of the mass of the roofing from our standpoint, I think is not going to be as significant as it appears in some of these images, which I understand it does look like it's sort of twice or 2.5 times sort of the base of the building from certain angles. But anyways, those we certainly did look at those. Ron, if you want to add anything else or show some of the progress drawings, by all means, go ahead.
Oh, well, I don't want to dig right now.
All right. Well,
I have to stop sharing and go dig through some files, but we have those, and we could do a follow-up email or something like that.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and Ron, if I recall, it also impacted the fenestration design with the gable, and I think that was one of the main points there.
That's right. That's right. So we could send you a couple of the things that we discarded along the way and see what you think, Eli.
Okay, that'd be great. I'd appreciate that. Any other comments from council members? We have a motion from Bob, so if there's no other comments, we can take a second on that motion.
Yeah, and just for clarification, there's sort of two actions. The actual resolution that we have there is really about the approving the addendum. So the addendum for the CEQA approval that was already granted, already approved, just explains that with the change in the project to the demolition now of the existing building, there's no need for additional CEQA work, and that actually no increase to any of the impacts already identified in the original mitigated negative declaration. So that's the resolution. And then the second part is just really direction to proceed, and we don't have a specific resolution or anything for that, but we would like to get that confirmation from the council tonight. That'd be great.
Great, thanks, Adam. So we've got a motion on resolution 30, 2021, which is about the CEQA document. So we'll take a second on that. And rolling through. Charles, great, thank you. Sorry, I had to scroll through my windows there. Rebecca, could we have a vote, please, on that resolution?
Yes, let me just stop the sharing just a minute. Okay, now I can see everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, so are we taking the two items separately, or are these the two items to
This is so
and
I
then the
believe the
resolution?
only vote is this resolution, and then
Okay.
and then we'll just quickly get any comments related to direction.
Okay, Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you very much. And I have made my only comments regarding direction. Any other comments from council members? Yeah, Bob.
Eli, I understand your points. I hope they can get addressed, but I really like this design. This has taken us a long time to get here. I just want to see this keep moving because this looks really good. And I think we're all going to be really, really proud of this when this opens up. Thanks.
Agree, Bob. I'd rather see this approved on time than a change approved, than a change caused a delay. But maybe there's a way, maybe there isn't. Anyway, thank you. Great. Okay, no other comments from council members? Fred.
Yeah, just a quick question. So when you come back to us next, that's when you'll actually have a bid for us?
It'll be a request for authorization to advertise.
Okay. When you get to the point where you come to us with the bid, can you bring to us, I want to say something that's all encompassing that would show that this is what the bid is for the construction, but also some kind of chart that shows that we're also going to be spending X amount of dollars for IT equipment. I just want to make sure that we have a full understanding that it's more than just 10.6 million right now without bidding it out, and that there's other pieces that are moving. I just want to make sure we have an idea of the overall cost, I want to say, and what's involved with it.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll look into that.
And you guys, I'm really sorry, but if you don't mind, the hand that was up briefly in public comment and then went down is back up. So I don't know if they're having a technical difficulty, but since they had their hand up initially during public comment, I'd like to reopen public comment and hear this comment. That's okay, right, Amy? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you guys. Sorry. So Barbara, we're going to bring you back on here.
I don't really want to talk again, but are you sure the town constituents are behind you? You guys are all behind it. Are you sure your constituents are behind you? I'm not sure. I just think you need to make sure. So that's all. That's my comment. So if you, there's nobody's weighing in on this, and this is a big decision. So I think you're kind of working in the ether, and the town is like not really aware of what's going on. So there's some, I don't know, communication backlog or something that's not working. There should be more people commenting on this, I think. I'm actually in favor of redoing the town hall. I think it's long past due. I totally agree with Bob. And I like what I see. It's not that. I'm really upset that you approved that, the garbage increase, but that's something different. But yeah. But I think you need more input from town residents, and they're not here. So something's wrong. I'm just pointing that out.
Thank you, Barbara. And Phyllis, I see your hand back up, and town policy is that we don't come back to folks for public comment if they've already commented on an item. So I'm very sorry, but please email us if you'd like to make any further comments, and we're happy to include them in the record. Just have to stick to policy here. So with that, I'm going to close public comment on this item again, and we have already had our vote and given our direction to staff. So we have concluded with this item, and I am happy to follow up with Barbara offline about the extensive public process that this project has gone through, because I think that's an important facet and needs to be discussed as many times as it takes. I think I feel confident in the process, and I'm happy to chat with residents about that. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, project team. Thank you, Ron and staff. That brings us to our next item 6B, which is consideration and possible direction to staff regarding proposal to reinstate the assistant engineer position in the Department of Public Works. One, reinstate the assistant engineer position classification with a salary range of $7,092 to $86.21 per month. And two, amendment to compensation schedule C, mid-management employees to add new position salary range. And I'll turn it over to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. So in the staff report, we reported this position had been in existence with the town roughly from 2000 to 2009 and was utilized by Public Works for presumably a chunk of that. And there was an analysis done roughly around 2007, and for whatever reason that job class wasn't being used and was taken off the salary schedule. It is a very common kind of entry-level position in the engineering ladder, and one that we think would provide a lot of benefit to the town to bring that back. And we hope that you would support that. And then the salary range that we provided is in line with the previous salary for that position by the town back in the early 2000s, just escalated with the same range that we've escalated the other salary schedules. And we also believe it's in line with many of our neighboring jurisdictions here in Marin. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Excuse me. Thank you, RJ. Do we have any questions for staff on this item from council members? Alrighty, if not, we'll turn this over to members of the public. So any members of the public who'd like to make public comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. And we have a hand up from Phyllis. And Phyllis, you can unmute yourself whenever you're ready and go ahead.
I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just wondering, and why I raised my hand on the other question is, didn't you have to have a motion and a vote to accept the dissolve?
No, that was direction to staff.
What, excuse me?
That was direction to staff.
Oh, okay, fine. Thank you. That's all I want to know, not on this.
No problem. Thank you. I don't see any hands up on this item. Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments on this item?
There were no emailed public comments received on this item.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then we'll bring it back. We'll close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion and a possible motion. Who'd like to start us off? And if there are no comments, we will entertain a motion. Bob.
As I'm reading this, it looks like we're just providing direction, or do we need a motion?
Oh, I guess this is
direction.
Just
direction.
Two meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you, Bob.
Then I'd say let's do this. Makes sense to me. Thanks, RJ.
Great, thank you. Is anyone opposed? Great, okay. Direction is unanimous. Thank you, guys. I've been advised by the town attorney that we need to reopen a previous item. She wants to clarify some comments about the franchise agreement. So we're going to reopen item 5B and go to staff for any comments.
My apologies to council. This is my first go around with the franchise agreement, and the link on the agenda to the franchise agreement was a link to an older version of the franchise agreement. And section 16M1 was amended, and this section allows, after receipt of a timely base rate change application from the collector for any given year, and after the town has adequately analyzed the request, the town must notice at least one public hearing in order for town council to object and hear any objections which may be made to the requested rate adjustment. In its regulatory capacity, the town council may take action to object to any rate adjustment application and direct the collector to submit another base rate change application, at which time public hearing will be continued to permit collector to request a rate adjustment that will not be objected to by the town council. In the event of action taken by the town council to object to a rate adjustment application, the rate adjustment sought by collector may not be established, and all hearings must be completed by the date of the rate adjustment, July 1st, until the town council shall extend such time. So under this provision, the town does have rights to object, but given the other provisions of the contract, and that is the town's agreement to give a fair rate of return, there would have to be a basis for the objection other than we just don't like it. So, for example, if the third-party evaluator had objected and said, this isn't a viable increase, but the collector still wanted to move forward, the town could certainly object. The collector could then come back with a subsequent application that met whatever the third-party evaluator said. So the town is not powerless as the process runs through. Here, you essentially have the third-party evaluator come back and say, no, we only think this lower rate is defensible, and the application was then conformed to that. So I just wanted to be clear of what this contract permits and what it doesn't permit. If this information is something that makes the council want to revisit its decision, you could have a motion for reconsideration and you could take different action.
And Mr. Mayor, not my finest business item moment, so I apologize for that. And my computer froze up when I was trying to, it's page 36 of the agreement. And so my point to the council was, I think when I jumped back on, and I think I heard the end of what you all did, that was the part of, hey, do we want to evaluate and audit the COVID year? Is that accurate, going backwards? I think that's what I heard from you. And I think absolutely that would be appropriate. But I also think what I heard from you, and that was trying to make my point before I froze, was if it's submitted timely, and in those years like this, when you have that third-party analysis, like we did, and it's a percentage point, we can appeal it. We can always ask for them to come back, but what are you going to do? Ultimately, it's valid. They met the criteria of the franchise agreement, and we really, the conclusion that I think you came to, and the reason why, is accurate. But I think to Amy's point, she wanted to make sure that you understood the mechanism in the situation for doing that. And I think you did, but we wanted to make sure, insult to injury, bring it back and just make sure we're on the same page. And again, I really apologize.
No worries. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys bringing that to our attention and making the clarification. I think just for due process, I'll just ask council members if anybody wants to make a motion to reconsider, and if not, we can just close this item again. So does anybody want to make a motion to reconsider? And seeing none, our previous vote stands, and we will close this item again. We have completed all of our public hearings and business items, which brings us to item 7 in tonight's agenda, council reports, and we'll start with the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Again, I just want to just really thank my staff. I think their reports and moving forward with the town hall project. Just thank you so much. We're really excited to move forward with that and get that completed over the next 2 years. As you know, June 15th was a big day for the state of reopening. We are still following really closely at the county level of Cal OSHA's decision-making on indoor activities, especially for town hall and in our community center. And so we're following that closely. On Thursday, we should have a little bit more update with coordination with our town attorney. If we can, we really want to start opening up our community center for smaller groups like the Lions Club and all of our clubs and groups that enjoy it on an annual basis. So we're working hard for that. As you saw, we've started the concerts at the pavilion, and so it was a great event. And we have some maintenance and some work to do. We're going to add some bathroom access there for this coming Sunday moving forward. On the 4th of July, we're working with some business owners at the pavilion to possibly have an event there, and also trying to do something within the park just for families to congregate and have a sense of community for the 4th of July. So we're working closely with Park and Rec and the Chamber of Commerce and the county on that. And so more to follow later this week. And with that, that's all the updates I have for now.
Great. Thank you very much, Todd. And we will go to council member reports, and we'll start with Charles.
Once again, the TAM Commission hasn't met yet. I did want to bring up that the Senate passed a new national holiday, I believe, today. And so I guess moving forward, just understanding how that'll affect the town. That was the Juneteenth holiday, I believe. So.
Great. Thank you, Charles. Good point. Leela.
Nothing for me except that I attended the Sunday Town concert, and it was wonderful. And I'm so grateful that we have that as a community gathering opportunity again. So thanks to everyone who made that happen. But I did not have any other meetings or anything since our last meeting.
Great. Thank you. Bob.
Nothing to report.
Great. Thank you. Fred.
Yeah, I attended Twin Cities Disaster Preparedness Committee and also the MCCMC Economic Recovery. It's funny how fast things meet, because we met, I think, a week ago Friday, and we were talking about guidelines from Marin County and or best practices. And it's just funny in a week how fast things move towards the 15th opening. It's like you can't keep up with it. It's changing every day. I also attended Ross Valley Paramedic Authority. There we just approved a new budget for the next fiscal year. And just one little shout out to Chief Martin and his group, because in Marin Estates, we actually had the defensible space inspectors in our neighborhood this week. It's the first time I've experienced anything like that. And I was actually home when they came by, but they were totally courteous, totally professional. They walked around the backyard, gave us some hints, and they'll have a report for us, I think sometime this week. But I just wanted to compliment him and that whole program, because it's totally worthwhile what they're doing. So I just think it's great. So again, a big thanks to Chief Martin and his team.
Great. Thank you, Fred. I just have a few quick items. One, CMSA, as I think you guys know, generates biogas from the sewage that they process, and they run that biogas through a generator to create renewable energy. They have been selling that energy to MCE, which is great. Even better news is that they recently built or purchased a larger cogeneration engine, and we've just at our last meeting were able to approve an expanded contract so that we can sell all of that excess energy produced from our new larger cogen engine to MCE. So that's just awesome, great addition to locally generated renewable energy. League of Cities, the big thing was we got an action alert asking us if we wanted to send a letter to state lawmakers and to the governor requesting a $10 billion allocation from the state of California's $100 billion surplus that would be directed mainly towards cities for a variety of items, but some things that are key to Corte Madera, including makeup funding for lost TOT tax. Sales tax has, I think it didn't quite take the hit we thought. It bounced back faster than we were afraid it might. And we got some good American Rescue Plan funding coming to make that up. But the TOT that we've lost has not really come back. And that's, I think, still kind of a big hole in Corte Madera's budget, and a lot of other towns like us, like Sausalito, for example, that rely on TOT. So I worked with staff to send that letter requesting that allocation to Sacramento. We would have brought it to a council meeting, but we received too short of notice, so we didn't have time to bring it to a meeting before the deadline to send it. And then the last thing, I think you guys probably all got this email as well, but I just wanted to highlight Andrew Henning of Opening Doors Marin, which is one of the forces behind our Project Home Key here in Corte Madera, sent out an email just letting us know that, thanks to all of the efforts of all sorts of organizations and officials all over the county, Marin is more than halfway to its goal of ending chronic homelessness among some key groups. I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but I know that for veterans and for families both, we've housed more than half of the previously unsheltered individuals and families in those groups in Marin County. So I think that's incredible progress going forward. And I think we should all feel proud knowing that our Project Home Key here in Corte Madera is part of that story countywide. So I think that's something to feel good about. And that is all I have. That brings us to item 8. Do we have any comments on our draft agenda for the next meeting? If not, we have an SD2 meeting, so we're going to adjourn the town council meeting and convene the Tuesday, June 5th meeting of the Sanitary District 2 Board of Directors. We'll wave the salute to the flag. Rebecca, could we have a roll call, please? I don't know if she's still with us.
Oh, still here. I realized my camera was still off. Board Member Lee.
Here.
Board Member Mongan.
Here.
Board Member Ravazio.
Here.
Board Vice President Casissa.
Here.
And Board President Beckman.
Here, thank you. Now we'll have open time for public comment, which is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to any items not on our agenda, and we'll give 3 minutes a person. Any members of the public that would like to comment can raise their hand via Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org. And Rebecca, did we get any emails for SD2 open time?
There were no emailed public comments received.
Great, thank you. And no hands up, so we'll close open time. There are no presentations, which brings us to item 4, our consent calendar. These are items that are routine or have been previously discussed and do not require further discussion. And any member of the public or the board can pull an item from the consent calendar for discussion. Would any members of the board or staff like to pull any items from our consent calendar? Seeing none, would any members of the public like to pull any items from our consent calendar or comment on the consent calendar as a whole? If so, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org. And Rebecca, did we get any emails for SD2 consent?
Thank you, Rebecca. No, there were no emailed public comments.
Great, thank you. And no hands up, so we will close public comment and bring the consent calendar back to the board for discussion and a possible motion. Fred.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion. We approve consent items 4A through 4E.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Bob. Rebecca?
Board Member Lee.
Yes.
Board Member Mongan.
Yes.
Board Member Ravazio.
Yes.
Board Vice President Casissa.
Yes.
And Board President Beckman.
Yes, thank you. That brings us to item 5A, our public hearing for tonight. Review and possible adoption of resolution number 4, 2021, approving the town operating budget for fiscal year 2021-22 and providing direction to staff as appropriate. And I'll turn it over to Daria.
Thank you. You have before you the same proposed budget as was presented at the last meeting on June 1st. There have been no changes to the budget. It's the same as was presented. I just wanted to mention that in July, we'll be bringing a resolution to the board so that you can consider a formal reserve policy of the $2.5 million reserve, which is included. That was previously recommended by the Finance Committee.
Great, thank you so much, Daria. Do we have any questions from the board on this item? Seeing none, we'll open it up for public comment. If any members of the public would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand via Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org. Rebecca, did we get any public comments on the SD2 budget?
Thank you, Rebecca. No emailed public comments were received.
Great, thank you. And no hands up, so we will close public comment and bring this item back to the board for discussion and a possible motion on resolution number 4, 2021. Bob.
Move to approve resolution 4/2021.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second? Great, thank you, Fred. And Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Board Member Lee.
Yes.
Board Member Mongan.
Yes.
Board Member Ravazio.
Yes.
Vice President Casissa.
Yes.
Board President Beckman.
Yes, thank you. There are no business items tonight, which brings us to item 7, district manager and board member reports. Is there a district manager report?
Yes, Mayor, or President of the Board, Beckman. Just one quick item. So in response to the drought here in Marin and the MMWD ordinance, district staff and the maintenance team have rented a water truck to be able to transport and use recycled water produced at CMSA. And we continue to do that, and we'll do so, I think through the summer or as long as the ordinance is in effect. And we think it's been a good response to that, that drought and that ordinance, and we'll able to keep and continue to do our functions to keep our systems clear and safe.
Great, thank you so much, RJ. Do we have any board member reports? Do we have any comments on our draft agenda for the next meeting? And if not, we are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.